Check the storage unit. That's all Gavin said, handing me a crumpled note at our father's funeral before walking off with Dad's Rolex gleaming on his wrist. I stared at the 4 words written in Dad's shaky handwriting. My pulse quickened. Something about it felt deliberate, like a secret meant only for me. Gavin thought he'd already won. He had no idea what those 4 words would unleash, or how fast his empire would crumble. The funeral home smelled of lilies and expensive cigars, the kind Dad used to celebrate big contracts. 300 people packed the chapel that Tuesday morning, from truck drivers in worn boots to investors in polished suits. My brother, Gavin, worked the crowd like a politician, gripping hands, clapping backs, performing grief for profit. Dad wouldn't want tears, he declared to a group of partners near the casket. He'd want us to keep the Whitmore legacy rolling forward. He was already wearing Dad's gold cufflinks, the ones Dad wore to every contract signing. Even the Montblanc pen Dad kept for good luck peeked from Gavin's pocket. Claire squeezed my hand so tightly her nails pressed crescents into my skin. He didn't even wait for the body to cool, she whispered. Our daughter, Lila, sat beside me, eyes sharp and angry. Grandpa would have hated this, she muttered. She was right. Dad built Whitmore Freight and Logistics with grit and loyalty. One truck, one driver, one promise at a time. Gavin built his reputation with press releases and golf outings. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it short. My father believed success wasn't measured by wealth, but by the trust of the people who worked beside you. He taught me to shake hands like I meant it, to fix what's broken, and to always keep your word. When I sat down, Gavin rolled his eyes. An hour later, in Dad's office overlooking the truck yard, Harold Bennett, Dad's lawyer of 30 years, adjusted his glasses and looked uneasy. The smell of leather, old paper, and Dad's cologne still lingered. This is unusual, Harold said. Your father insisted the will be read immediately following the service. Then let's get to it, Gavin said, settling into Dad's chair behind the oak desk like it already belonged to him. Harold read slowly. To my son, Gavin Whitmore, I leave my shares of Whitmore Freight and Logistics, the family estate, my investment portfolio, and all personal effects not otherwise specified. Gavin smiled, a slow, smug grin that spread like oil across his face. Then Harold continued, to my son, Ethan Whitmore, I leave the contents of Storage Unit 9C at Riverside Storage, prepaid for 1 year. Silence. Gavin burst out laughing. A storage unit? That's rich. 15 years of loyalty, and you get Dad's junk. Maybe some old tools and his bowling trophies. Harold handed me a brass key and a folded note. Dad's handwriting. Check the storage unit. Gavin's laughter followed me out the door. I'd spent half my life keeping the company alive, running routes, fixing engines, and covering shifts while Gavin hosted investor luncheons and called himself a visionary. When drivers broke down in snowstorms, they called me. When a hospital shipment got delayed, I was the one behind the wheel. Gavin called me the failure with a paycheck. He said it often enough that others started believing it too. The night before Dad's heart attack, we'd had dinner together at the old house. Claire made Dad's favorite roast. Lila told him about her science project, something about renewable energy, and for a moment, he'd looked proud. Then Gavin started talking about automation and profit margins. Driverless trucks are the future, he said. We can cut payroll by 40% in 2 years. And what about our drivers? I asked. Most of them have families, mortgages. Dinosaurs, Gavin replied. Just like you, Ethan. Stuck in the past. Dad said nothing at first. Then, quietly, Gavin's right. We have to think bigger. That one sentence did more damage than every insult Gavin had ever thrown at me. 3 days later, Dad was gone. 2 days after that, Gavin was CEO. And now this. A key, a note, and a brother who thought he'd taken everything. The next morning, I drove to Riverside Storage. Unit 9C sat in the far corner, dust gathering on the padlock. My hands shook as I turned the key. Inside wasn't junk. It was a time capsule. Stacks of ledgers, old route maps, a file cabinet full of contracts, and one locked briefcase. Inside, I found bank documents, stock certificates, and something else, a notarized letter dated 6 months ago. It was from Dad. Ethan, if you're reading this, then the board already knows what I discovered. Gavin has been diverting company funds into offshore accounts and falsifying insurance claims. The evidence enclosed will restore the company to its rightful hands. You always understood what this business truly meant, to serve, not exploit. The legacy was never his to carry. My knees went weak. Attached were bank statements, wire records, and board resolutions naming me as successor in case of Gavin's misconduct. By sunset, I was sitting in Harold Bennett's office with everything spread across his mahogany desk. He read in silence, then looked up with wet eyes. "Your father trusted you to finish what he started," he said. When the board met 3 days later, Gavin walked in smiling, until I handed each member a folder. Inside, the proof. Offshore accounts, fake invoices, misappropriated funds. By the time I finished speaking, Gavin's smile had vanished. "You think you can take this from me?" he hissed. "I'm not taking anything," I said. "I'm reclaiming what Dad built." Security escorted him out minutes later. That night, I stood in the truck yard, listening to the rumble of engines heading out for the midnight runs. The same sound I'd grown up hearing outside my bedroom window. Lila's laughter echoed from Claire's phone as they watched from the office window above. For the first time, I understood what Dad meant by legacy. It wasn't in the boardrooms or the Rolexes. It was in the miles driven, the people remembered, and the promises kept. And somewhere out there, on a long stretch of open highway, I swear I could almost hear Dad's voice again, steady, proud, and smiling. "To my son, Ethan Whitmore," Harold Bennett said, his voice tightening as if the words themselves weighed too much. "I leave the contents of Storage Unit 9C at Riverside Storage, paid in advance for 1 year." There was a long, awkward pause. Then Gavin burst out laughing so loud it startled even Harold. "A storage unit?" he said, clutching his chest in mock amusement. 20 years of loyalty, and you get Dad's leftovers? What's in there? His bowling trophies. Maybe his old mechanic's overalls." Harold slid a small brass key across the desk. Beside it was a folded note written in Dad's unmistakable handwriting. "Check the storage unit." I tucked it into my pocket as Gavin leaned back in Dad's leather chair, spinning it slightly like he owned the air around it. "By the way," he said, pretending to glance at paperwork, "I'll need you to clear out your office by Friday. I'm promoting Dylan to operations director. We need someone with vision, not someone who wastes time remembering driver birthdays." "Dylan doesn't know the difference between a reefer trailer and a flatbed," I said. Gavin smirked. "He knows how to read a profit margin. That's all that matters." "Oh, and Ethan, your company cards are canceled, effective immediately. Can't have former employees accessing company funds." "Former employees?" I stared at him. "I'm your brother. You're the failure with the paycheck," he said, standing. "Except now you don't even have that. Consider this your chance to finally grow up." He turned back to Dad's desk, sweeping aside framed family photos and tossing them into a box like garbage. Claire didn't speak on the drive home until we reached the edge of town. Then her voice cracked like a snapped wire. 20 years, Ethan. You gave him 20 years of your life. You missed Lila's recitals, our anniversaries, your own birthdays, all for that company. Maybe there's something Dad wanted me to have," I said, though the words felt hollow even as I said them. "Your brother just stole $60 million and the house you grew up in," she said. "The one where your mom planted those white roses, where your dad built your treehouse." She was right. The 2-story colonial, the piano Mom used to play every Sunday morning. It all belonged to Gavin now. Even the carved initials in the basement wall were technically his property. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Gavin's grin, hearing Dad's silence at all those meetings where Gavin mocked me. I remembered the dinners where he'd introduce us. "This is my successor, Gavin, and my other son." Why leave me anything at all? Why not just write me out completely? I ended up in Lila's room at midnight, watching her sleep. 17 years old, dreaming without fear. I wondered how I'd pay for college now. Gavin had made sure I had nothing. No pension, no severance, no savings left unmonitored. "Can't sleep?" Claire whispered from the doorway. "Just thinking." "I keep hearing your father's voice," she said softly. "Everything happens for a reason. Maybe you just can't see it yet." "Dad said a lot of things," I muttered, "like when he promised Gavin and I would be partners someday." She crossed the room and took my hand. "Whatever's in that storage unit, we'll face it together. We've built a life before without their money. We can do it again." But as I looked down at Lila's peaceful face, I couldn't shake the feeling that Dad's note wasn't sentimental. It was specific, calculated. "Check the storage unit." At 2 in the morning, I grabbed my jacket and drove across town. Riverside Storage sat on the edge of the industrial park, just a few blocks from the first Whitmore freight warehouse. The night guard nodded as I passed. Unit 9C was tucked in the far corner, its metal door dusted with years of neglect. The lock was new, shiny, untouched by weather. I slid the key in and turned. The door groaned upward, revealing a museum of our family's past. Filing cabinets, boxes stacked in perfect order, framed photos, and handwritten ledgers going back to the 1980s. Dad's first delivery log sat on top of a wooden crate. I almost left until I noticed fingerprints on one dusty cabinet. Inside the top drawer was a manila envelope labeled Ethan in Dad's careful script. My hands trembled as I opened it. Ethan, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and Gavin has everything. That was always the plan. But he's brilliant at business and blind to people. I've been watching him for years. The shortcuts, the bribes, the safety violations he covers to save a buck. Everything's documented here. But more importantly, I've been building something else, something for you. Behind the cabinet, hidden by stacked boxes, was another wall of storage crates labeled by year, 2014 through 2024. I opened the one marked 2015. Inside were contracts, deeds, and bank statements, not for Whitmore Freight, but for a company called E&W Logistics LLC. E for Ethan, W for Whitmore. Dad's letter continued. 10 years ago, I started a separate company in secret, with you as the silent partner. Every client Gavin called too small or unprofitable, I took under E&W. You know why I kept you in operations? Because that's where trust lives. While Gavin sold our soul to investors, you built relationships with the people who make this business work. I tore through box after box. Medical transport contracts, agreements with small-town suppliers, pay records showing names I recognized, drivers Gavin had fired, dispatchers who had resigned, mechanics who'd retired early. They were all still working for E&W Logistics. I let Gavin believe they left because they were weak. He never looked deeper. Every time he cut a corner, I invested in people. Every bonus he denied, I matched through E&W. You've signed half these documents already as operations director of Whitmore Freight. I just never told you what they truly were. It's all legal, all documented, all yours. In the box labeled 2023, I found property deeds, warehouses in 6 states, new trucks with safety systems Gavin refused to buy, full-service maintenance centers. The final box, 2024, held 3 things: a financial statement, a business card, and a set of keys. E&W Logistics, estimated worth $97 million. The card read, Daniel Reed, Acting CEO, E&W Logistics. 1420 Riverside Drive. The note attached to the keys said, Your office is waiting. My phone buzzed. A message from Harold Bennett. Your father said you'd come tonight. Daniel's waiting at the warehouse. Your team wants to meet you. The facility was only 3 blocks away. When I arrived, the parking lot was full. I froze. Dozens of familiar faces stood in the glow of industrial lights. Drivers, dispatchers, mechanics. People I thought were gone. Rodriguez, who Gavin fired for taking paternity leave. McKenna, who quit after Gavin called her emotional. Thompson, whose daughter's nursing school Dad had helped fund. About time, boss, Rodriguez said, grinning. We've been waiting for you. Daniel Reed, the young man from the business card, stepped forward. Your father hired me 5 years ago to handle daily operations while we waited for this moment. He said you'd come the night you found the note. How many people know? I asked, still dazed. Everyone here. Your father handpicked them all. Every time Gavin pushed out someone good, he recruited them for E&W. He handed me a folder. Your father's final deal. Closed 48 hours before his death. Inside were acquisition contracts, 3 major competitors, Mercy Transport, Horizon Freight, and Atlas Carriers. The combined valuation made my head spin. He bought our competition, I whispered. No, Daniel said, smiling. You did. Every holding company traces back to your name. Perfectly legal. Your father set it up so that the moment Gavin took over Whitmore Freight, these 3 firms would merge under E&W Logistics. My phone rang. Gavin, what the hell did you do? He shouted. 50 drivers just quit mid-route. Our biggest clients, gone. Morrison Foods, Baxter Medical, they all canceled. I didn't do anything, I said, watching Rodriguez coordinate routes on brand new tablets. You did this to yourself. You can't do this to me, he barked. You're nobody. You're the failure with a paycheck. Correction, I said. I haven't taken a paycheck from Whitmore Freight in 2 years. Dad moved me to ENW's payroll in 2022. The line went silent. I hung up and turned toward the warehouse. Engines hummed, forklifts whirred, and the people who'd built our father's dream were smiling again. For the first time, I understood what Dad had been trying to teach us all along. Success wasn't about dominance or profit margins. It was about loyalty, decency, and the quiet power of doing right by people who trust you. I looked up at the glowing sign above the loading bay, E&W Logistics. And I swear, in the hum of engines and the steady rhythm of diesel trucks, I could almost hear Dad's voice, steady, proud, and finally at peace. You never noticed, I said, watching his face twist, because you never actually looked at the operational budgets, just the bottom line. The line went silent for a beat. Then Gavin's voice came back, lower, harder. I'll sue you. I'll take everything. With what grounds? I asked. Every client that left signed termination clauses you approved. Remember when you insisted on 30-day exit options for flexibility? Turns out flexibility cuts both ways. The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. Thompson walked over and held out a key. It wasn't to a Whitmore Freight rig, but to a sleek BMW semi parked outside, white paint gleaming under the security lights. Your father designed this model himself, she said softly. Said transportation isn't about moving things. It's about connecting lives, and that never ends. Behind her, the new warehouse pulsed with quiet purpose. Drivers ran pre-trip safety checks on rigs equipped with every upgrade I'd ever begged Gavin to approve. Dispatchers sat at ergonomic desks, routing loads on software that actually worked. Through a glass wall, I saw a break room that looked more like a restaurant kitchen. Real meals, not stale coffee and vending snacks. This, I murmured, this is what I wanted Whitmore Freight to be. McKenna joined us, wiping grease from her hands. Your father knew Gavin would burn it all down eventually. So he built something stronger. Something Gavin couldn't touch, because he'd never think to look for it. James, our finance director, approached with a folder. There's more, he said. Every major client who left Whitmore Freight tonight, they received proposals from BMW Logistics weeks ago, contingent on one thing, Gavin taking full control. I frowned. Dad predicted this? James nodded. 5 years ago, he said Gavin would get the benefits and hike prices within a month. So our proposals were ready. 15% cheaper, better service, fair pay. Your father planned everything. His exact words. Gavin needs to inherit the kingdom to learn it's built on sand. Ethan will inherit the foundation to build something real. My phone vibrated with a stream of notifications. Text from Gavin. What did you do? Our clients are gone. Drivers walking off mid-route. Insurance canceling policies. Dad's records leaked to regulators. Dad had documented every violation Gavin ever buried. And now, apparently, they'd surfaced at the worst possible time for him. James handed me a final envelope. Your father's last instruction. Said to open it after your brother calls 5 times. Inside, a single handwritten line. Now he's ready to learn. Offer him a job. Entry level. Second chances matter. I closed my eyes, emotion rising like a tide I couldn't hold back. Dad hadn't abandoned me. He'd been training me for this. 6 months later, Whitmore Freight and Logistics filed for bankruptcy. Gavin had leveraged every asset, betting the future on contracts he didn't understand. When the drivers left, when the customers followed, there was nothing left but debt and rusting trucks. The estate was repossessed. Investors sued. Even Dad's old Rolex, the one Gavin wore to board meetings, ended up in a pawn shop window downtown. One Tuesday morning, he walked into my office at BMW Logistics. Not the cramped cubicle I'd once had, but a repurposed warehouse filled with light, hum, and people who believed in what they were building. He looked 10 years older, his expensive suit replaced by khakis and a cheap polo. The man who'd once strutted through boardrooms now moved like someone unsure whether he still belonged anywhere. You planned this, he said, dropping into the chair across from me. Dad planned this, I replied evenly. He knew you'd take everything. So he made sure everything wasn't worth taking. Why didn't he just give it to you? Gavin asked, eyes red. I opened Dad's final letter, One paragraph I'd never shared with anyone except Claire. Gavin must fail on his own terms. It's the only way he'll learn. When he comes to you broken, offer what I never could, a chance to start again. He's still my son. He's still your brother. I need a job, Gavin whispered. The words seemed to scrape his throat raw. I slid a folder across the desk. Dispatch position. Entry level. You'll report to Rodriguez. His head jerked up. Rodriguez? The driver I fired. The dispatcher who manages the Southwest routes now, I said. He's good at training new people. Patient. Fair. Everything Dad valued. Gavin's jaw clenched. I could see the pride fighting with the reality of his situation. Everyone deserves a second chance, I added quietly. Even failures with paychecks. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then his eyes filled, and his voice cracked. I called you that for years. I know, I said. Now you understand how it feels. But here's what Dad knew. Failure isn't the end. It's the start of what you build next. He nodded slowly, looking down. Guess Dad was right. Again. Yeah, I said softly. He usually was. I thought about those long nights in the dispatch office, memorizing every driver's name, every route, every family story. Piper was right that evening at our last family dinner. I really did know every driver's kid's name. That was the difference Dad always saw. Business wasn't about empires. It was about people. It was about Thompson taking double shifts so her daughter could finish nursing school. About Rodriguez rushing home to tuck his kids in after a 14-hour haul. About McKenna proving leadership isn't defined by an MBA. That was the legacy Dad wanted to pass on, the kind built with trust, not inheritance. The old Whitmore Freight building is gone now. A shopping plaza stands there, half vacant already. But 3 blocks down, the BMW Logistics sign burns bright across the skyline. Our drivers earn 30% above the industry average. Our safety record leads the nation. And every employee knows they matter. You know what your problem is, Ethan? Claire teased one night, echoing Gavin's old tone. You care too much about people. I smiled. That's why Dad made me the real heir, and Gavin just the illusion. In my office, Dad's final note hangs framed above my desk. Check the storage unit. Beneath it, I added my own words. Legacy isn't what you take. It's what you build. Next week, Gavin starts his first full shift in dispatch. Rodriguez tells me he's been studying route maps late into the night, asking about families, safety records, pay equity. Maybe, just maybe, Dad was right again. Sometimes the greatest gifts arrive disguised as losses. Sometimes what looks like nothing turns out to be everything. And sometimes, the only way to find who you're meant to be is to lose everything you thought you were. If you've ever been underestimated, remember this. Your worth isn't set by those who try to diminish it. It's defined by the integrity you keep when no one's watching. Because real success, the kind that lasts, isn't measured in what you own. It's measured in who still stands beside you when everything else is gone.